If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is the MAURA series, episode 67, DC Circles. That's right, we're finally getting to it. Aaron Larkin, Bill Rausch, Scott Wall, and a slew of other individuals, steerers, obfuscators, and trolls alike, who all seem to be centered around the DC area. And what are the connections to law enforcement or other government agencies, and why does nothing in this case add up? It is truly a unique true crime case. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and if you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through, or you can just go to youtube.com/Mindshock or youtube.com/MindShockTrueCrime. If you want to help raise awareness in this case and other cold cases, hit the like button, share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. Okay, now there is so much to cover regarding the DC circles here. And there is a contingent of followers regarding this case that think it's all a waste of time to focus on the personalities. And certain individuals, even there's a certain religious fervor they exhibit when trying to shut down discussion of even the people behind the case and the DC circles. But if the DC circles, if one individual or possibly others, either knowingly or unknowingly, assisting in some kind of a cover-up, that would get us farther from the truth. So it's very telling on how individuals get triggered and how desperate they are to shut down any conversation regarding Aaron Larkin, Bill Rausch, under the guise of it has nothing to do with Maura Murray. But how would they know it has nothing to do with Maura Murray? I mean, Aaron Larkin even put herself at the scene. How many other individuals from either UMass or any other area, how many of them put themselves at the scene of the Saturn in New Hampshire? Aaron Larkin did. Okay, and then of course she semi-backtracked on that, or completely backtracked on that, depending on what timeline we're looking at. But yeah, it's very, very telling. And of course, Bill Rausch, military man, and his connections to Aaron Larkin. Scott Wall, another DC area individual, and his connections. And then, of course, we also have Julie Murray in the DC area. We even have sightings of Maura Murray not far from the DC area. If you haven't checked out the previous episodes, make sure you check them out. Particularly episode 52, Ontologist. And this is, of course, an episode focused on Aaron Larkin and her coming out of the woodwork to obfuscate and steer in the Maura Murray case, getting FOIAs that other individuals could not get, but for whatever reason, when Aaron Larkin's name is involved, she was able to get these FOIAs. Some find it curious, some don't. Some advocate for sweeping all of these curiosities, anomalies, and coincidences all under the rug and to pretend and hallucinate that this is a completely standard missing persons case and there's nothing to see here in regards to all of these unanswered questions, and everybody should just take it on blind faith that Butch Atwood is an infallible god and Maura Murray was in fact at the scene, and there was no funny business whatsoever. There was no earlier accident. There was no staged accident, despite what several different accident reconstruction experts have concluded that it was indeed a staged accident scene and the Saturn did not hit a tree. But people like Scott Wall maintain the narrative with no evidence whatsoever that the Saturn hit a tree. Why is that? Very, very curious. If you look at the history of guerrilla ontology and Discordianism and all of these Illuminati connections and terminologies that Erin Larkin is obviously well versed in when she was choosing her name, Guerrilla Ontology. Again, make sure you check out episode 52 for all of that information. So I'm going to lead off with this. I have a assortment of posts from various social media websites, various conversations, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and some of these are jumbled, copy-pasted, so I might not be able to give credit to the authors of some of these posts. If you want credit and you're obsessed with it, feel free to leave your comment. But we're trying to get to the truth here, so crediting every single pseudonym and handle can be quite difficult. So here's a post. This was from Reddit, March 2019. So this is addressing a circle of posters and trolls. People know who these individuals are associated with Larkin, Bill Rausch, some of these, again, trolls, steerers, and obfuscators, regardless of their goals, regardless of whether they were responsible for whatever happened to Maura Murray or not. I mean, there's a lot of unhinged, loony individuals involved in this case online. That much is known. Now, what they have, the exact connection to Maura Murray or what happened to her, that, of course, we don't know. So here's a post. I made a similar post last year, receiving a lot of hate mail publicly and privately about it. Through the onslaught, I discovered a few things. We have much fewer posters than you would think. And this is referring to the controlled Maura Murray subreddit, r/Maura Murray, obviously with all of the sham moderators and it's all a big sham to control the narrative, shut down logical discussions. This is all known now. Of course, a year or two ago, there were people who actually thought that subreddit was legitimate, but it's very obvious for a very long time. So we have much fewer posters than you'd think. Many of these accounts are run by the same small group of people. Similarly, many posters here posing as random armchair detectives are a lot closer to the case than they say. Keep that in mind and be careful. Response here, sure seems like. Do you mean since the original Missing Maura Murray site topics, but why would the same small group of people stay here all the time? I mean, even people who get wicked obsessed with something like this eventually move on, don't they? Any other reason you can think of for them sticking around so long? The response here, I've been around since the topics and MySpace era, and still that is difficult for me to answer. A sense of community, a kindred spirit feeling with Maura. As I said, there are way more people from Maura's circle posting here than admit to it. Same with UMass, Hanson alumni, and people from the vicinity of the crash site or alleged crash site. So this is, of course, again, known to the people who have been following the case objectively. And so obviously Bill Rausch has been caught with several different accounts. James Renner exposed all this. There's also a lot of posters who post eerily similar to Erin Larkin. And again, if not Erin Larkin herself, these could be some of her cohorts posting, and it's always the same blind defense of Erin and Bill. So again, with the same vocabulary and writing style, so it's very obvious these are all the same individuals. So let me get to some of the bombshell news for some. For people who have been following the case, this will not be surprising in the least. So this was a post, again, on James Renner's blog, April 25th, 2021, Breaking Good, an internet provocateur tells all. You gotta love James Renner's titles on these posts. They're quite astute in describing what's going on. So he's talking about Fulk here, F-U-L-K. So I haven't really specifically mentioned him. This is one of the biggest trolls, steerers, and obfuscators in the case online. He's a perfect example of being difficult to tell if it's someone playing stupid. It's difficult to believe someone could be this bereft of logic, reason, basic English comprehension. And this individual seems just obsessed with obfuscation. with time wasting. So instead of addressing actual issues, this individual plays all these fallacies like semantics, logical fallacies, while not even understanding the basic definition of words or playing stupid or pretending he's not at even a 4-year-old level. I had a couple of interactions with him online in the nature of I was attempting to have a good faith discussion because he seemed to get triggered by several points, particularly MAURA Murray not being at the scene. And then all he could argue with was faith fallacies and an incomprehension of basic English words. And he just kept spinning in circles around these. So it's just a big exercise in time wasting to engage with such an individual because either A, he really is genuine and he just has some kind of mental disability, in which case it's not really going to be productive to have a long conversation with this kind of individual because he doesn't have the mental capacity to understand anything being discussed, so it's not going to move anything forward. Or B, he's not really mentally disabled, he's just playing extremely stupid because he has these agendas, obfuscation being number one on the list, and to prevent any actual logical discussion getting anywhere. So in either of those two scenarios, the only benefit of engaging such an individual is to expose this kind of activity online because he's not the only one. I mean, and of course he has multiple accounts, other individuals have multiple accounts, but the amount of obfuscators and steerers online, there's no shortage of them. Obviously there's many with different accounts, but there's more than one or two individuals like this. There's definitely a circle of individuals that operate with the same playbook. And when this is exposed, like it clearly is with this Folk guy, it can be beneficial to the people who actually think some of these posters are posting in good faith, which of course they are not. So here's this post from Renner. Call him Folk. He doesn't want to use his real name, though if you follow the weirdness of the MAURA Murray case, you already know who he is. For years, Folk has been one of my biggest critics, in bed with the group who sometimes do things like put maps to my house online or post my wife's cell phone number on blogs. Recently, Folk reached out to me with an apology. He'd had a change of heart. He wanted to confess. And so I drove out to meet him in Massachusetts, not far from where MAURA Murray grew up. Another coincidence. What he had to say was stunning. Not everything is fit for publication, but he did grant me permission to share a few things. First, he admitted that it was him and Aaron Larkin, a blogger and sometimes advocate for the Murray family, who orchestrated an elaborate hoax in an attempt to frame me for defamation. Unfortunately, it ended up affecting a real-life court case which kept the Murray family from obtaining photos of the crime scene. And that's a whole separate issue. I'll be doing a podcast soon on the actual photos allegedly taken by Cecil Smith the night of the staged scene with the Saturn, and individuals who may have seen those photographs and even mentioned that they had seen them. But let's continue here. The fake tip came in through my website, a comment from someone named Michael Baldwin who said they saw Aaron at a pizza joint in Woodsville, New Hampshire with MAURA on the day of the disappearance. Michael Baldwin was the name of a real student who lived in the same dorm as Aaron at UMass at the time. Of course, I needed to verify this, so I asked to speak to him over the phone, and the number he gave me checked out as a Massachusetts number. But here was the part that almost got me. He also named another student, a man whose last name is Ducharme. He said he was in Woodsville that day for Ducharme's birthday. I checked. It was a real student whose birthday was February 9th. And still, something didn't feel right, and I didn't publish. And it all came undone when Detective Charles West called the hoaxer, who admitted it was a joke. West used this event in his successful attempt to deny access to crime scene photos a short time later. Now, again, I don't know what this has to do with anything. If you're FOIAing the photographs, what difference does it make whether there's trolls or obfuscators hovering around the case? Either it's legitimate to be public or not, regardless of any other issues. So again, Chuck West obviously using this as an excuse to further obfuscate and not actually solve crimes. He seems to have a history of that. But anyway, continuing on here, I feel bad about it now, says Falk. One night last August, he and Aaron discussed how they could create a fake tip and send me to publish so they could turn around and show everyone that I am not credible. Wow. And even that should tell the level that people hate James Renner. No one is more hated than he who speaks the truth. And Renner and John Smith are the number one targets of these trolls and obfuscators. And some of which have direct connections, again, either to the accident scene or UMass, or staged accident scene. And it's very telling the way they operate. And again, let's keep the history and the track record in mind. Erin Larkin has been wrong every step of the way. I mean, it's still unclear. Is she still denying the grand jury? Is she still denying that all these witnesses actually filed police? There was a time when she was actually denying there were even police reports. And so she's been wrong every step of the way when it comes to James Renner and what James Renner reported. So she's just been blindly defending Billy Rausch this entire time, while throwing all these victims under the bus. So now she has nothing better to do than concoct this scheme with this other obfuscator troll steerer just to make James Renner look bad. And that really tells you what kind of an individual you're dealing with when it comes to Erin Larkin and even Folk. Now, Folk might have some mental issues. I don't know if he's completely mentally disabled or not, but he might have some kind of psychotic issues where he kind of oscillates back and forth, because he did confess to this. So apparently he does have some kind of a conscience. I don't know. Again, I don't know the guy. Perhaps he has a split personality. One of them is completely mentally disabled, and that's why he can't even understand the basic definitions of words. And then perhaps another personality can comprehend what's going on and has a conscience about it. Who knows? Anyway, continuing on here with James Renner's article here. Maybe that's how I expose the expletive Erin wrote. Feed him bad info. She was talking about James Renner here. It was Erin's idea to use someone from her dorm. She sent him pictures of herself so that he could get the description right. She mentions using a traditional media outlet. If I published the fake tip to report on my damaged credibility. Folk says he believes when he spoke about traditional media, she specifically was referring to Amanda Knox, who she and Bill Rausch were trying to get to cover me on a podcast. Spoiler alert, I've spoken to Knox for over 5 hours for her podcast, and I think she sees the complex weirdness involved with all parties. Now the plot thickens even further. Did we really think that the MAURA Murray case would intersect the Amanda Knox case? I mean, wow. For people still hallucinating that the MAURA Murray case is just a standard DUI walk-away missing person or something of the sort, I mean, I think we've gone past that quite a long time ago. A long time ago. And of course, I've covered the Amanda Knox case. If you haven't checked out the Mindshock episode on the Amanda Knox case, it's a very, very in-depth, comprehensive look at the case and all of the logistics involved in that. It is not a simple case. That much can, I think, be agreed upon by most parties. But again, there's always people arguing everything. So, and again, if you weren't there, you don't really know what happened. Anyway, continuing on here, Folk uses the moniker Salvador Cortil in these messages. During our conversation today, I had Folk pull up his Facebook app and show the conversation in his messages to verify that those are not photoshopped. You can see them get increasingly concerned as soon as police became involved. Another interesting event that Folk shared with me was a conversation he had with Erin Larkin when she told him about meeting up with Bill Rausch at a bar in or near D.C. She grew uncomfortable with him and said she thought he was flirting with her in an aggressive way, including sending lewd texts. Folk was told that Scott Wall then came to pick up Erin and take her home, which seemed to anger Rausch. More texts that Folk shared with me seem to back up this version of events. Some of Folk's conversations with Larkin happened using Facebook's encrypted chat feature, which allows one party to delete the conversation on both ends if they block the person. Larkin has since blocked Folk, so some of that may be gone. Early today, Larkin deleted or unpublished her 2 Twitter accounts and Reddit profile. Clearly the mark of an innocent individual. There was talk between Larkin, Scott Wall, and others about beating up James Renner, he says. But he thought that was probably a joke. Author's note, not really a haha kind of joke. There's more, including a surprising story involving a Tiffany elephant necklace, which I will publish later. From the standpoint of a journalist who has been harassed for years by online trolls, it's nice for once to get an apology. So for some individuals, this might seem very shocking, mind-shocking even. But to people who've been following the case closely and are familiar with the antics of Aaron Larkin, Bill Roush, Scott Wall, and the Folk Master, who's obviously full of it, these individuals, it's very, very easy to see what's going on. And none of this is really surprising for people who have been truly objectively following this case. But I would say the most surprising aspect of this is that Aaron Larkin is so triggered by the fact that James Renner has proved her wrong every step of the way that she has nothing better to do than spend all this time and energy plotting just to make James Renner look bad. And even here's the thing. I mean, this is where just the extreme lack of logic comes into play. Because I don't want to fall for these false dichotomies. I'm not saying that Aaron Larkin or folk that they're either complete geniuses or mentally disabled. Just because they're obfuscators and trolls, that doesn't mean they're geniuses either. So there's obviously some middle ground in terms of intelligence, but here's the thing. Even if James Renner published this, even if he went public with this tip, how would it damage his credibility? He's reporting a tip. How would he know? Now, of course, he might think the tip is credible, but James Renner is not a stupid man. He would probably hedge it somewhat, saying, I received this report, just like he did with Maura Murray's Saturn in Boston in the story that disappeared and everybody wants to sweep under the rug. He wasn't claiming that it was 100% true. He was reporting what was reported to him. How does that damage his credibility? So if he's receiving a report that someone spotted Aaron Larkin, I mean, Aaron Larkin put herself in the area. And there's a lot of other curiosities there. Like, supposedly she's injured. And then that Monday is supposedly the first day of track practice or whatever, where both Maura Murray and Aaron Larkin happen to not be running track. And then Aaron Larkin happened to get injured the same weekend Maura Murray goes missing skiing, as if she's never skied before. Now, I'm not saying skiing injuries aren't common. I'm just saying when you put that coincidence stack, every additional coincidence on top of a coincidence stack a mile high is a bit more suspicious than if there was no coincidence stack and it was just Aaron Larkin happening to get some kind of injury that prevented her from running track. Aaron Larkin happens to have the same job as Maura Murray at the security desk. Aaron Larkin happens to have the same confidant in Kate Markopoulos, supposedly Maura Murray's closest friend, third wheel to her and Haas, according to other track members. And supposedly, Aaron Larkin herself referred to Kate Markopoulos as her big sister, and yet she doesn't have her on her podcast. Dead silence, anything relating to UMass or Kate Markopoulos. Fishy business. And again, that doesn't mean anybody's innocent or guilty. That's, again, just compared to other cases where you have all these friends coming out of the wood. I mean, people that are barely friends coming out to raise awareness, let alone close friends. So let me look at a post here from John Smith. This is from John Smith's blog, Truth Seeker Investigations, search for Maura Murray.wordpress.com. Aaron Deborah Larkin, Dark Shadows, Strange Bedfellas. And this is from April 22nd, 2021, where John Smith references Scott Wall's history, again, with child abuse images on his laptop, and Scott Wall throws his own son under the bus, who is however many years old, 7 years old or something like that, who can somehow organize all of this imagery and pornography into different folders and all of these things. Quite fishy indeed. I don't really want to get into Scott Wall's history because that's not really the exact point of the case, even though he was technically acquitted. That's not necessarily the same thing as being innocent. So I'll go over a few astute posts regarding Scott Wall. Guilty or innocent on Scott Wall isn't the issue. even though I feel it's extremely repugnant either way, and reading through all the documents, it looks like an overabundance of evidence showing the defendant was the one involved in these activities. With that being said, all of this revolves around respect and the right thing to do. Either way, this was a severe distraction to the MAURA Murray case itself and the family. On its own merit, the defendant, in light of the accusation, should have permanently stepped away from trying to be on the inside circle of a missing 21-year-old. Whether anyone thinks it's fine or okay, regardless of what any family member says or doesn't say, he should have walked off. That's not a sign of guilt, it's the sign of a man putting a cause ahead of his selfish and egotistical needs, purely that. And then referring to this image as sickening, with Scott Wall sitting next to U.S. Marshal Art Roderick. And of course, Art Roderick had made it clear on many different occasions that he's not after the truth. He's just after putting to bed any conspiracy theories or anything that puts law enforcement in a bad light. But either way, Scott Wall is sitting right next to a U.S. federal marshal, which I don't know whether you need to laugh or cry at that, but let me continue the post here from the MAURA Murray Mindshock subreddit. There is an expletive sitting next to an ex-U.S. Marshal at a table at CrimeCon. U.S. Marshals every year round up scumbags who abuse or traffic young children. It's a severe epidemic. Kids from all ages suffer greatly and are raped and murdered by sick freaks. I don't want anyone saying I'm a prude. Consenting adults can do what they want and view adult porn images up a storm. This is about children, meaning teen and under, and the sickening crimes put on them. I can't believe a U.S. Marshal is sitting there all smug next to an FBI-accused child porn exploiter without vomiting into a bucket. Again, let's make this clear. This is not about how the case was decided upon, but the nature of the charges themselves. Had this been a case of stolen firearms or skimming the IRS, it would be entirely different. MAURA was an adult at 21 when she went missing, but regardless, any association of any kind to child porn or any person with one iota of respect should step away forever. Leave. No one wants that ick to be next to them. Well, maybe Art does. And of course, all of these individuals already knew about Scott Wall. They admitted this. So Maggie Freeling, Aaron Larkin, everybody knew about him, and apparently they thought it was fine. I'm not 100% clear on whether Julie Murray knew or any of the Murray family. That's unclear. I don't know if that's ever been definitively stated. I would think no, but then when it all went public, they were also strangely silent. So who knows? Some other posts here. The Murray family took offense, and rightly so, to insinuations made by James Renner in regards to the photos of some young cousins found in a porn magazine. Anyone else find that ironic when compared to the subject of Scott Wall? The response here, there are a lot of ironies in this case, and many people are speaking out of two expletive holes instead of just one. There are things where the rules don't apply, and it should be troubling for everyone. Guilt by association is a real thing, and it also applies to a person driving the bank robbers away from the crime. It still holds some weight, unfortunately. When one lies down with dogs, they will get up with fleas. So, yeah, it is very telling, and also Scott Wall's association with Bill Rauch, and I guess this would be a good time to address rumors of he who shall not be named. In the Haverhill area, this construction worker, son of an affluent family with some kind of government connections, and supposedly he was friends with MAURA Murray on MySpace. Now, there may be a photoshopped image of this individual, he who shall not be named, with Scott Wall and or Bill Rauch. Aaron Larkin feigns no knowledge of this, yet there are some cryptic references. Some people believe she actually introduced that as some kind of a false lead because she wants everybody looking away from UMass. So she wanted to kind of fabricate connections with he who shall not be named, although there are also legitimate connections with this individual and that area and a lot of other shady business that goes on. So is Scott Wall connected? And of course, Scott Wall is, for those who have forgotten, he's the individual that donated computers to Helena Murray. Who knows what kind of spyware or whatnot he had on those computers that he donated. He seemed to have a vested interest in this case early on. Really, really bizarre. Very, very bizarre. Is he involved with the CIA or some kind of other government agencies? Is that why the FBI dropped all charges? Is this some kind of Jill Zane Maxwell situation? Or Of course, Jeffrey Epstein, where no matter how many crimes he commits and these circles, he's protected because he's involved in some other kind of ring. And it's all, of course, very despicable, but it seems to center around DC. That is curious, is it not? Is it not? So, another post here, another coincidence, if true, was that Maura Murray had contacted a social worker who dealt in child abuse cases not too far before she disappeared. This is usually written off fast that it had to do with one of her classes. As we know on Mindshock, maybe this shouldn't be so easily dismissed. And so this was a week or two before MAURA disappeared. The woman was an advocate for DCYF or something similar, but the call was super short. So apparently she was in Weymouth, and she was already retired in 2004, yet Maura Murray's cell called her. So again, let's go to James Renner's blog. So this was posted December 16th, 2017. This case is just nuts. As you can see, I'm diving back into the case for a bit since the women who came forward about Bill Rausch. Currently, I'm going back through Maura's cell phone records from the days before her disappearance. On January 24th, Maura made 2 separate calls to the home of a woman who worked for the Department of Children and Families, investigating and working on child abuse cases in Weymouth. Her number was unlisted, but she sometimes gave it out to clients. Now that's curious, because if it's unlisted, so that means Maura Murray got it from a client? So would it be a random call for some kind of class assignment, like some people who want to write this off allege? I don't know. In 2004, she was retired, but she was working up until the late 90s and would have been an employee of DCF when Maura and her siblings, or even her friends and families, were children. She does not recall speaking to Maura directly. So does that mean James Renner contacted her? I also found it interesting that she has never spoken to police, though her number is one of the last numbers Maura called on her phone before she disappeared. She was never contacted by the Rausches or the Murrays either. Huh. And asterisk here, for those suggesting that this has something to do with Maura's nursing classes, this was an unlisted home number, and the woman had nothing to do with UMass. Okay, so the curiosity here, regardless of whether this woman was involved in anything or not, is it curious that the police didn't even contact the last numbers on Maura Murray's cell phone? Now, what is that indicative of? Is this Keystone Cops, or was there some kind of gag order, shutdown order on the case completely, where a higher agency, again, possibly the FBI, who did visit UMass initially, and is this some kind of situation where they just ordered a stand-down, shutdown on everything so there'd be no need to investigate anything? Because if it was a legitimate case where there was no stand-down order, obviously police would have contacted the last individuals on this. I mean, that's just standard protocol, just to rule things out. And this was never done. Now, the Rausches actually investigated quite thoroughly. I mean, they even wanted Karen Mayott's information, her supervisor, who might have fired Maura Murray that night. Again, we don't know the circumstances of all of that, but she was very interested in that. She contacted her herself, and of course, Karen Mayott's police statement on a girl being upset and escorted, possibly fired, on a few nights before she goes missing, somehow that's so confidential that can't be released. And that police report just cannot be seen by the public for whatever reason. Standard DUI walkaway, right? Anyway, so is it curious that the Rausches and the Murrays never contacted her either? So apparently James Renner's the only individual who thought to reach out to this woman. And, or did she have something to do with something? Maybe the FBI, if the FBI contacted her, or U.S. Marshals, DEA, whoever. Again, coincidentally, these agencies all had activity in Haverhill, New Hampshire, this small little hamlet. They all had activity, coincidentally, the night Maura Murray's Saturn is found in some kind of staged accident scene. That night, there's DEA activity, there's U.S. Marshal activity. I mean, very curious. I mean, this case is a dream for coincidence theorists. They have more things to write off as coincidence than any other missing persons case. But is it possible that an upper agency did speak to this woman and there was some kind of a gag order where they told her not to say anything about this call to MAURA Murray. In which case, that's what she relayed to James Renner, that no one contacted her. She doesn't recall speaking to MAURA, even if she did, even if it does have something to do with something. Again, this case is tough because it's difficult to identify because again, if there is some kind of other case and these upper agencies are going after bigger fish, so to speak, would they employ individuals like Bill Rausch, Scott Wall, Aaron Larkin that are kind of close to the case in some capacity to keep it under wraps? So it's not that they're necessarily the bad guys. I mean, I don't know if I would call them the good guys either, but if they're protecting a case, so to speak, what kind of mechanisms would they use to do so? And of course, it's been public for quite a few years now that law enforcement agencies do employ individuals to steer narratives online and on social media. So that would not be that surprising. And of course, guilty parties do that as well. So we don't know what is what. We don't know who the good guys or the bad guys are. This is Mindshock, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. What was also funny, some people are referring to this circle of trolls and obfuscators and steerers, Scott Wall, Aaron Larkin, Folk, and others. Scott Wall apparently insisted that Salvador Cortiel was a real person, and it was stupid for anyone to question that. So again, this is a staple of steerers. They pretend to know all the things they don't. And and the religious fervor with which they propagate this is very, very telling. Someone responded here. He also insisted his 6-year-old son downloaded, organized, and backed up removable USB drives, hundreds of hours of pornography, including child exploitation and all of that. Wow. Another response here. I find it surprising. Never would have guessed how expletive up she is, referring to Aaron Larkin. It's scary. Wonder if her mental illness was already present in February 2004, and whether she did have something to do with MAURA Murray's disappearance. My response to this comment here, the unhinged nature of her ranting against James Renner over the years while being proven wrong every step of the way, i.e. denying the very existence of a grand jury regarding Bill Rausch, etc., and the blind defense of Bill Rausch, treatment of Bill Rausch's victims, completely ignoring all logic, reason, looking at UMass, etc., was all very obvious all along. What's not obvious is what is behind the FOIAs she was able to magically get that no one else could get, and her insider info from law enforcement. I mean, going back to the speeding ticket, all these other things where Aaron Larkin is communicating with law enforcement as a private citizen, and yet is able to get information that other private citizens cannot get. Another response here, I'm not well versed in criminal law in the US and all that stuff, but does a FOIA come easier if you are a suspect and have been questioned in a criminal matter? Maybe they have indeed been looking into Bill Rausch and or Aaron Larkin, and one of their attorneys got the information that way. Seems weird that have an inside line otherwise. That's an interesting point, although otherwise could include if they were employed by other agencies. A response on Fred Murray. Fred is not dumb. This whole salt of the earth stuff may be pure BS. And Fred is just waiting for Bill Rausch to screw up, which he kind of has with other women. Another person chimed in, I have definitely considered the possibility Fred said that just keep Bill Rausch close and involved. So is this a case of keep your friends close and your enemies closer? Who knows? Another response here, is it possible that it's because Fred is complicit to the steering? Are they all aware of the reason why MAURA Murray ran away, and are they all protecting each other? I'm not saying they necessarily harmed her, but maybe they know she ran away, but none of them wanted to be blamed as being the reason why she ran. If Fred points a finger at Bill Rausch, saying, for example, that MAURA Murray and Bill Rausch fought and had broken up, this would have law enforcement all over Bill Rausch, even if he didn't do anything. Then Bill Rausch might point the finger at Fred, saying Fred was very angry at MAURA Murray for wrecking his Toyota, then law enforcement would be all over Fred. So maybe they all colluded because MAURA told them she was leaving, maybe with a boyfriend, and they just don't know where she went and don't want law enforcement to treat them as suspects. Also, why would Fred tell Bill Rausch to move on, and this was quite early after the accident, when he was supposedly engaged to be engaged? That's what's tricky, too, because initially both Fred and Bill Rausch were even talking directly to MAURA, please come back, we can work things out, whatever. But it's unclear whether they were doing that of their own conclusions or because law enforcement fed them the DUI walkaway narrative and they just trusted law enforcement and were operating as such. That's really unclear, and especially with all the shadiness with Scarinza and all of those law enforcement officials, it's really unclear. Another post here, it says that Aaron Larkin met up with Bill Rausch at a bar in or near DC, and that she grew uncomfortable with him, and then Scott Wall came and picked her up. I take it Erin Deborah Larkin knew Scott Wall before she met Bill Rausch. This is definitely a tangled web indeed. Response here, this is the biggest irony of the year. Erin Deborah Larkin meets up with an accused multiple woman abuser, drinks in a bar with him. He becomes super creepy, so she calls Scott Wall, who had 19 FBI agents raid his house for child porn with rapes of young teens, to come rescue her. Whoa. And my response here is only in the Maura Murray case would we see something like this. I mean, do we have examples of this in any other case? So before we get to the Scott Wall, Helena Murray, Erin Larkin timeline and Scott Wall's involvement with the case, real quick, let me just go over another article here. February 14th, 2021, James Renner's blog. FBI used Maura Murray case to link child pornography to Scott Wall. Wall acquitted after destroying computer. Today, I've published a feature-length article about Scott Wall, an advocate for Maura Murray's family, who was the target of an FBI investigation for child pornography in 2013. Here's an excerpt. The person using the computer was undoubtedly Wall, the government said, because the person was also accessing information about and photographs of Maura Murray at the same time. The defendant is interested in the unsolved disappearance of Maura Murray, a young woman who had a car accident on a New Hampshire highway in February 2004 and was never seen again. The defendant claims to have spent time at the accident site in New Hampshire on multiple occasions, recorded a video retracing the route of Miss Murray's last drive, and posted the video to YouTube using the moniker Human1666. That's not weird at all. The defendant also claims to have met with Miss Murray's family members in Boston and has had at least one long telephone call with one of those relatives. So what's the story here? Is Scott Wall alleging that his 6 or 7-year-old son, while organizing all these folders and copying them to USB drives with all these different types of pornography, supposedly there was bestiality and all these other things that his 6 or 7-year-old was able to neatly organize in folders, was his 6 or 7-year-old also searching the Maura Murray case online while doing all those things? I don't know. Again, I'm not claiming Wall is innocent or guilty of any of this, but his defense seems a little strange. And then he's highly concerned about another computer that he destroyed and all of these things. The other thing that's kind of strange here, according to Renner's article here, during the 3 hours long raid, FBI agents seized a number of items containing suspected or known child pornography, including a Dell laptop, Buffalo USB drive, and Phantom USB drive. Both USB drives were taken from a locked safe that Wall had to open for the agents. So is he also alleging that his 6 or 7-year-old son could, I don't know what the height of this safe was. Was this a safe that was taller than the 6 or 7-year-old? And regardless of where the safe was, does his 6 or 7-year-old have the combination to the safe? So here's another kicker. While the agents were surveying his computer equipment, Wall said he thought his wireless internet access was open, suggesting someone else may have used it to access the child pornography. He told them he'd only closed it up in the last few days. Agent Miller knew this to be untrue, as he'd checked the wireless network on multiple occasions and found it to be locked down. Wall would have known better too, as he worked on advanced computer and surveillance system as part of his job. So a guy who's working on advanced computer and surveillance systems is donating computers to Helena Murray relating to the case of Maura Murray, a missing person. So do all the coincidence theorists think it's beyond the realm of possibility that he had any kind of spyware installed on the computers that he donated to Helena Murray? Anyway, his defense seems a little flimsy regarding this. Again, I'm not saying he's innocent or guilty. I have no idea. But it's curious, again, back to Renner's article here on Medium, as the agents removed evidence from his house, Wall did not mention that his primary work laptop was not among the items seized. He'd accidentally left it at a house in Florida during a recent job, and it was currently in transit on a UPS truck. Some of the other folders were marked needs to be sorted. And this also included various different files, including child pornography. Now, would a 6 or 7-year-old label a folder needs to be sorted? Again, I don't know. The Buffalo USB drive was full of methodically categorized pornography arranged in folders by content such as scat and shemale. Yeah, his son would have been 7 years old when the files were placed in these folders. As soon as agents left, Wall was on the phone with his friend in Florida who had the computer in the mail asking for tracking numbers. The package arrived a couple hours after the FBI had left. When they asked for it sometime later, Wall returned over what remained little more than a shell. From the report, the defendant methodically disassembled the computer, removed and disposed of all items of interest to the FBI, the hard drive, which contained files, programs, GUID, and information about internet searches and browsing, and the RAM, which also contained data and activity information for the device. The defendant did not stop there, however. He went on to alter the wiring connected to the power supply and dispose of the existing power supply to prevent law enforcement from attempting to obtain information from the machine by installing new RAM, a new hard drive, and a new power supply. So basically, he completely destroyed the laptop so it couldn't be used in any way. Is this the mark of an innocent man? I don't know. See, again, I've mentioned this before. Is it possible that he was framed, or it was some kind of Jeffrey Epstein situation where, I mean, I don't know why he would throw his own son under the bus. Would that be a last-ditch effort to, if he didn't want to say he was framed by government agents, because nobody would believe that, he came up with the story of his son, thinking that they wouldn't go after his son, so that was a safer defense. I don't know, just going through all the possibilities. It's weird. How much dirt do they have on Scott Wall? If Scott Wall is innocent, is this some kind of Jeffrey Epstein situation where they have dirt on him and they set this up, and if he wasn't going to go along with whatever, they would find him guilty? If he agreed, they would drop it. I don't know. It's all very, very curious. So apparently Scott Wall said he joined the case in some capacity in 2010. He claimed he didn't know anyone involved prior to that. Of course, we don't know if there's any military connections with him and Bill Rausch, and possibly he who cannot be named, the construction guy. They may or may not all know each other, of course, and we don't know, again, how long everyone knew Aaron Larkin. Although, again, theoretically, it's possible, since Aaron Larkin was at UMass when Maura Murray was there, she could have crossed paths with Bill Rausch during his visits as well, even if there weren't a lot of visits. Again, we really don't know. He apparently had Kate Markopoulos' dorm number. So, again, Bill Rausch did have contact information for people around Maura Murray. I think, would people really be shocked if the text messages were ever released from Maura Murray's phone, or possibly the AOL Instant Messenger messages from back then? Did Maura Murray really know Aaron Larkin? Did Bill Rausch know Aaron Larkin back then? I mean, would it really be that shocking? I mean, most people are harmed by people known to them. If Maura Murray was harmed by people close to her at UMass over jealousy or whatever, that wouldn't be the first time in history, would it? It's a lot more likely than meeting your fate at the hands of a stranger. Let's examine Erin Larkin's comments from her first appearance on Missing Maura Murray with Tim and Lance. Some curious comments here. She was asked if she knew Maura Murray. Her response: I knew of her, and I knew that she existed. I'd seen her around. I heard her talked about, but I would not say that I knew her or I was friends with her. Is this some kind of Freudian slip where she knew her? I don't know about close friends, if she was an acquaintance, but she's literally saying, I would not say that I knew her or I was friends with her, because she doesn't want to say that, regardless of whether it's true or not. Also, is that a natural way to speak? I knew of her and I knew that she existed. Is that a weird phrasing? I mean, again, nothing really seems above board with Erin Larkin. And even though she didn't know her, somehow she knew that Maura Murray was supposed to rejoin the track team. Erin Larkin's exact words: she was supposed to come back that first week of February. So, wow, okay. And keep in mind, again, Kate Markopoulos is her big sister, is Erin Larkin's big sister. Kate Markopoulos, probably the person, regardless of whether you believe the narrative, whether she was just an acquaintance of Maura Murray's or whatever, she was basically the closest person to Maura Murray that is known about. Kate Markopoulos, Sarah Alfieri, they were the closest to Maura Murray that anybody knows about. And Erin Larkin somehow knows that she was supposed to come back that first week of February, so I guess it's possible Kate Markopoulos could have told her that. Tim and Lance asked her if she ever had a conversation with Maura. She replied, not that I would remember, at least. Now, is that a normal answer? Is it just me, or are none of these answers normal from an individual who placed herself at the scene of this staged accident? Who placed herself in the general area skiing? Who happened to have the exact same job as Maura Murray? Who happened to be on the track team with Maura Murray? Who happened to name Kate Markopoulos as her big sister, the person closest to Maura Murray? Here's a post here. All of that seems like professional deflection. Stating had seen her around, wasn't friends, and didn't know Maura is a form of truth without acknowledging details. Having a three-way friendship can draw out jealousy issues, especially in vying for attention. Stating recently that her and Maura were teammates is another odd remark to make. Was Erin Larkin working security at a dorm hall on February 5th? And I don't know if that's been talked about, because she would have known Maura Murray through the security circles as well, especially if people are getting each other to cover each other's shifts. Is it possible her or Maura have covered each other's shifts? But certainly, wouldn't there be some kind of UMass security meetings or other common individuals, supervisors, intersections of sorts? Because even if they weren't on the track team, people who have the same exact job, oftentimes they know each other. So there's many, many layers in which Erin Larkin could have known Maura Murray. I mean, another curiosity, would they have had any classes together? So Erin wasn't doing nursing, but were there any kind of general classes or any other classes they might have had together? I don't know if that's been ever looked into. And then, of course, Erin Larkin's, was it her brother that was there? Brother and or cousin? That was also at UMass at the same time as her and Maura? More questions here. Was Erin Larkin hanging out with Kate, too, at the party on February 7th? That's another curiosity. Was Erin Larkin at that party? If she was, no one has stated that she was. Did she originally say she went by the scene the night of the Saturn in case it was ever witnessed? Did Erin Larkin stay away in case Atwood recognized her until after his death? Did she have a crush on Bill Rausch in 2003 when he came to UMass to visit Maura? The other thing is the UMass track has ran at West Point. I'll be getting into the connections with that in a future episode, where both Kate Markopoulos and Aaron Larkin could have theoretically ran at West Point. Kate Markopoulos was definitively on a roster running track at West Point at the time Bill Roush was there. I'm not sure about Aaron Larkin. She might have been too young, but to match up the years. So a response here, she said she wasn't at the party Saturday night as she was skiing that weekend with her family in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. And keep in mind, Bretton Woods is where Alden Olson posted the ski tickets. Again, Alden Olson has been has been in and out of this case with such curiosities, it's impossible to just shrug them off as all mere coincidence. Because this was before Aaron Larkin, he was already posting all of this. It's just really bizarre. Okay, she stated she drove back to UMass Sunday night because Monday was the first official spring practice. I did find it interesting that Aaron Larkin seemed to confirm that Thursday was considered a weekend night for UMPD security employees and that the shifts would end at 2 a.m. and an employee would start packing up their desk at 1:30. However, unless I missed it, she was never asked if she worked that night or not. And that's a good question. So I don't know if there was 100% confirmation that she was at the first practice on February 9th. The other curiosity is when was MAURA actually last seen? Because if we can't trust the timestamp from an ATM from a video that took over a decade to release, it's problematic. Because if something happened to MAURA on Sunday night, then what? Or early Monday morning. But anyway, Erin claims she was at practice Monday, February 9th for the first winter track, but had an injury from skiing. She was tagging along with Kate Markopoulos while overhearing their conversation about what happened to MAURA Wednesday morning in the track office. Aaron Larkin claims her injury caused her to leave the track team. How could MAURA be her teammate if Aaron Larkin was a freshman and MAURA was not on the fall track team? Seems very disassociated, but they did share Kate as a friend. A couple more interesting comments here. Do we know who the security person that told Karen Mayotte she should check on MAURA was? Would be an interesting thing to find out. Kate Markopoulos was Aaron Larkin's big sister on the team, but was she the only one? Could MAURA also have been her big sister? That would make the my sister quote more interesting. Another response, each freshman had a big sister. Kate was in a Greek sorority, also in which they are called sisters. But I don't believe MAURA was in any group that had been mentioned. Although no one has mentioned this, what if MAURA was pledging to join a sorority and fell victim to a hazing accident and someone tried to cover it up? Maybe for her initiation, MAURA had to do XYZ and it went terribly wrong. Is that why she bought so much booze? My sister. Huh. My response to this comment was another avenue unexplored. That party was also rumored to be off campus and in a frat house area. Also, where Helena Murray attempted to rent an apartment, was it also owned by a certain Iranian who also happened to own salvaged used car dealership where Maura Murray's phone called, also connected to Patrait Vassi's landlord? How many coincidences are too many? Someone reported that there was a Murray living at the apartment party house in 2004, someone who married a cousin but was older than Maura Murray. Was she having the party, so maybe that's why Fred let them take the Toyota? Now, that's, again, I'm not going to go into the whole mess with Fred Murray's Toyota and the transportation, but there's certainly a lot of unanswered questions about this apartment party house. Very, very curious. Another response here referencing Maura Murray supposedly coming back to winter track, according to Aaron Larkin. I wonder why some assumed Maura was coming back to the winter track team if she hadn't been there during the fall season. Where did this rumor originate from? Kate Markopoulos? If Maura had such a crazy schedule lined up with nursing, clinicals, how would she have the time? Too much with 2 side jobs and classes. And of course, Maura Murray also worked at the art gallery. So yeah, 2 jobs, nursings, clinicals, all the homework. Yeah, it's really crazy. So I made this post on the Maura Murray Mindshock subreddit. If everything was above board, it's hard to believe that Kate Markopoulos would not have been on Aaron Larkin's own podcast since they were that close. And if they were actually interested in helping solve the case, a few scenarios come to mind. One or both of them are involved in something that led to Maura Murray's disappearance. 2, gag order of some kind that might pertain to Kate Markopoulos and not Aaron Larkin. 3, Aaron Larkin is a professional steerer obfuscator associated with a certain DC circle to make sure the case is only looked at in certain ways while keeping tabs on all insiders just in case they get too close. And of course, not to fall for black and white logical fallacies, some people believe there's a combination of all 3 of these. So interesting more here in the documents presented as her for the basis of her involvement in the Maura Murray case. She said she was an acquaintance and teammate of Maura Murray. Some comments here. I wonder why she always seemed to water down even knowing Maura when she first started speaking about the case. It makes me wonder how long she's actually known Bill Rausch and how far their friendship or whatever it is goes back. And she says they never met in person because Maura was injured, but did know all the others, as in all the other people on the team, I guess. She seemed rather vague in those early podcasts about how well she knew Maura. It was only last year that she seemed to let on that she knew Maura a little more than she had previously indicated. I recall her saying something to Julie along the lines of her once bragging that she ran against Maura. Interesting. Also, going back to that report of the tall blonde walking away from the scene. Could that have been Aaron Larkin? I don't know. Some other people have some theories on Aaron Larkin. I have a feeling that self-described nerd Aaron Larkin may have been envious of Maura and her West Point stud. Is getting close to Bill Rausch the reason she got involved, or has she been somewhat involved since 2004? I have to say that it is disturbing enough when hardened law enforcement officers and state officials connived together to put away two innocent people in jail for life in order to save the state $36 million and probably much more as well to make sure they will retire with a pension. This is a reference to the Stephen Avery case, of course. However, when a young woman in her 30s connives with others to set someone up because she doesn't like him and what he's written and seems to derive pleasure from it to the point of drooling on her keyboard as she writes about her revenge, that is way more disturbing in my opinion. Another poster here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If Aaron Larkin was a man, she would be a suspect. What a crazy story. Who does this? Add it to the stack of coincidences. Now, on top of everything, she's actively trying to discredit a PI working with the family who has been looking into her. Another astute post here. Bill Rausch is who they defend all the time, and why is the question? Was Renner getting too close to the answer? They didn't seem to care about him when he thought Maura Murray was in Canada. It was when he got wind of Bill Rausch's legal troubles that this all started. And if Aaron Larkin is so good at getting documents, she should try to get Bill Rausch's payroll records to prove where he was, as I'm sure the cops have something about Bill Rausch. Another comment here, Bill Rausch's specialty is propaganda. So my guess would be that when James Renner started looking into him, he hired, in quotations, Aaron Larkin and Scott Wall to steer attention away from himself. It should not surprise anyone that the son is like the mother and of utmost importance to them would be keeping up appearances, controlling the image that others have of them. I'm going to reread Aaron Larkin's email to James Renner. This is March 7th, 2016. Hi, James. I made a comment about cell phones and Kate Markopoulos a few weeks ago on your blog, and you had asked for me to email you directly. Sorry for the delayed response. It slipped my mind for a bit. I was on the track team in February 2004 and knew Kate, but wasn't really friends with Maura. That's another curious phrasing. I also worked the same security job as MAURA. I mentioned both these things to Tim and Lance already. I was actually returning from a family ski trip that Monday night, and it's possible I drove past the accident, but if I did, I don't recall. Another interesting way to phrase that. If I did, I don't recall. Is that a way to hedge if someone spotted you driving by there? I don't know. So I've been following the case since last fall. So she's claiming she's only been following the case since fall of 2015. But I am sorry to say I really don't have a whole lot to add. I also need to be cautious about staying off the radar because of my job. I work in politics in DC. So what's the best way to stay off the radar? To start a whole podcast about Maura Murray? Okay, not that I'm providing any great information anyway, but I just ask that you please don't post my name. That said, I'm happy to help if you need to know about UMass or anything of that nature. Thanks, James. And I don't think he actually did post her name until after she went public with her podcast. Okay, now here's another interesting point on why Aaron Larkin started the podcast. So this is a message. So this is what Aaron Larkin stated in a message. In fact, the irony is that post from John and his subsequent attacks are what made me start the podcast. So thanks, John Smith. So she claims, again, who knows what her mental issues are, possibly split personality, but she claims that she started her blog and podcast because of John Smith, which is curious. And again, if we go back to examining the timeline of the Oxygen show, which again set out not to find the truth, but to shut down any law enforcement conspiracies, that of course John Smith was asking questions. Again, John Smith wasn't saying anything happened or didn't happen. He's just asking questions in a direction that law enforcement didn't like. So all these producers who happened to go to UMass set up the Oxygen show, got Maggie Freeling, who happened to go to UMass, and they set up this documentary series to try to shut down all these narratives they didn't like, to try to explain away the timeline, to try to explain away Witness A's account, Karen McNamara's account of 001, and it of course failed miserably and got people looking in those directions even more. And that's why I think the Oxygen show is very useful in examining the true motivations and why people don't want certain narratives looked at. And is it the same thing with these DC circles? I mean, look at the individuals again involved with the Oxygen show. I mean, this is such a big mess, and there's so many more coincidences in this case than any other case. It's all very curious, but is anyone honestly surprised by the whole situation with Aaron Larkin, Scott Wall, and all these other individuals, this DC circle that seems to be actively involved in creating all of these fake accounts, steering narratives, and trying to shut down objective, logical lines of inquiry, particularly those from James Renner and John Smith. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of the Mindshock podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, share this podcast, hit that like button, and any questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. I only ask that you at least understand what was presented. If you need a tutor, basic English comprehension, basic logic, get a tutor. But if your only goal is to pollute the comment section with these Dunning-Kruger ramblings, not even understanding what was presented, that's not really going to push any case further. I guess that's too much to ask for in 2021, but I figured I'd ask anyway, and hopefully those that comprehend will respond. Again, comprehend first, then you can agree or disagree or whatever you want to post. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.